Everyone already has an opinion on this debate. Your parents tell you buying a house is the smartest financial move you can make. The internet tells you renting and investing the difference is the real path to wealth. Your coworker who just bought a townhouse says ownership is the only way to build serious money in your 20s. Meanwhile, finance creators online say renting is smarter and anyone buying right now is financially illiterate. At some point you stop knowing who to believe. So let us stop arguing opinions. Let us run the numbers. Path A buys. Path B rents and invests the difference. Same salary. Same city. Same savings. Same starting point. Both believe the other person is making a massive mistake. Neither actually calculated what happens after month 1. So we did. Mortgage interest, property taxes, maintenance, rent increases, appreciation, leverage, opportunity cost, inflation, every part of it. And once the full 15-year timeline is visible, one of them quietly builds long-term wealth while the other slowly loses money without realizing it. The final gap is not close. You are 25 years old. You have $42,000 saved. Both of you. That is where this splits. Path A. The buyer age 25. You buy a $295,000 home in Austin, Texas. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, quiet street, decent schools, 18 minutes from downtown, a backyard that needs work but feels manageable. You put down $42,000. Just over 14%. Not enough to avoid PMI completely, but enough to keep it reasonable. Private mortgage insurance adds another $82 every month until the equity crosses 20%. 30-year fixed mortgage. 7.1% interest rate. Month 1 housing breakdown. Principal and interest. $1,706. PMI. $82. Property taxes. $310. Homeowner's insurance. $138. Total monthly housing cost, $2,236. Then closing costs arrive before you even sleep in the house. Appraisal fees, title insurance, origination fees, attorney fees, prepaid taxes. Total closing costs, $10,800. Real starting position, $42,000 down payment, $10,800 closing costs. Total cash spent before moving in, $52,800. Take-home pay after taxes and benefits is roughly $3,760 monthly. Housing alone consumes 59% of your take-home income immediately. It is tight, genuinely tight. The seller's agent definitely did not emphasize this part. But you keep telling yourself this is an investment. This is equity. This is building something real. And honestly, you are not completely wrong. But you are not completely right either. Month 1. You move in. The inspection report mentioned a few small issues before closing. Nothing serious enough to cancel the deal. But the inspector did mention the water heater was already 14 years old. Average lifespan is 12. Month 3. The water heater dies. Replacement installed, $1,280. Straight out of the emergency fund. Month 7. Austin summer arrives. The AC starts struggling. An HVAC technician diagnoses a failing capacitor and a refrigerant leak. Repair bill, $940. Then he says the sentence every homeowner hates hearing. This unit is on borrowed time. Month 10. You open a maintenance savings account and start setting aside $250 every month. Because the house is teaching lessons the mortgage calculator never mentioned. Year 1 maintenance and surprise expenses, $3,460. And that is actually below average. Most homeowners should expect to spend 1 to 2% of the home's value every year on maintenance. On a $295,000 property, that means somewhere between $2,950 and $5,900 annually, every single year, whether you planned for it or not. Now here is the number that hurts the most. Year 1 mortgage breakdown. Total mortgage payments made, $20,472. Amount paid toward interest, $17,090. Amount that actually reduced the loan balance, $3,382. Read that carefully. You paid over $20,000. Only $3,382 increased ownership in the house. The rest disappeared into interest payments. Nobody calls mortgage interest throwing money away, but mathematically it disappears exactly the same way rent does. In the early years of a 7.1% mortgage, most of your payment goes straight to the bank. Gone. But beneath the surface something important is happening. The house is appreciating. Austin real estate has averaged roughly 4.5% annual appreciation over the past decade, including slower years and corrections. By the end of year one, the $295,000 home is worth approximately $308,000. You own more of something that is becoming more valuable every year. That mechanism becomes the most powerful force in this entire comparison. Path B. The renter age 25. You rent a comparable place in the same Austin neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, similar commute, similar quality. Monthly rent, $1,620. You take the entire $42,000 and invest it into a total market index fund the same week the lease is signed. No hesitation. Automated immediately. Then you invest the monthly difference between renting and ownership every month afterward. Monthly housing comparison. Buyer housing cost, $2,236. Your rent, $1,620. Difference, $616 monthly. That $616 gets invested automatically every month into the same index fund. Expected annual return, 9%. Long-term S&P 500 averages adjusted for realistic expectations. Monthly housing breakdown. Rent, $1,620. Renter's insurance, $16. Total monthly housing cost, $1,636. You are spending roughly $600 less every month than the buyer. No PMI, no property taxes, no maintenance reserve, no closing costs, no surprise repair bills. The AC breaks? Call the landlord. Dishwasher dies? Landlord handles it. Ceiling fan starts grinding? Maintenance request submitted online. Year 1 surprise expenses, 0. The original $42,000 investment plus monthly contributions grows to approximately $53,200 by the end of year 1. Total gain in 12 months, roughly $11,200. Meanwhile, the buyer gained $3,382 through principal payments, approximately $13,000 through appreciation. Total gain, around $16,382. But the buyer also spent $52,800 before moving in and another $3,460 in maintenance during year 1 alone. Early on, the scoreboard is genuinely complicated. Both sides have real advantages. And the story does not become interesting until compounding begins working against each other. The gap at year 3. Age 28, the buyer. Home value, approximately $337,000. Mortgage balance, $251,800. Equity, $85,200. PMI disappears because equity crossed 20%. The mortgage payment remains exactly the same as month 1. $1,706 in principal and interest, not $1 higher. Total maintenance over 3 years, approximately $10,800. Total interest paid, approximately $49,600. Total principal paid, approximately $11,400. Net worth tied to the house, $85,200. The renter. Austin rents continue rising. Year 2 rent, $1,685. Year 3 rent, $1,752. The rising rent slightly reduces monthly investments. Monthly investment contribution now, roughly $530. Total investment portfolio after 3 years, approximately $89,400. Net worth position, $89,400. The result after 3 years. Buyer equity, $85,200. Renter investments, $89,400. The renter leads by $4,200. And this is the exact moment renters love to point at. 3 years in and the investor is ahead. But something beneath the surface is beginning to shift. The buyer locked in a fixed mortgage payment that never changes. The renter locked into a housing payment that increases forever. One is building equity inside a leveraged appreciating asset. The other is building wealth without leverage. Both systems work, just differently, and the next 12 years change everything. The leverage difference. This is the part almost nobody explains correctly. Most people compare monthly payments, mortgage versus rent, but that misses the most important financial concept in the entire debate. The buyer invested $42,000 into a $295,000 asset. That means appreciation happens on the entire $295,000. not just the $42,000 invested. In year one, the house appreciated roughly $13,000. That is a 31% return on the original cash invested. Meanwhile, the renter invested $42,000 into an index fund and earned approximately 9%, roughly $3,780. This is called leverage, and it is the single biggest financial advantage homeowners have that almost never appears in the monthly payment debate. You control a large appreciating asset using a relatively small amount of cash. The renter has no leverage. Returns only apply to the money actually invested. That does not automatically make buying better. It simply means the comparison is more complicated than rent is cheaper. The gap at year 5, age 30, the buyer. Home value, approximately $366,000. Mortgage balance, $243,200. Equity, $122,800. Total housing costs over 5 years including mortgage, taxes, insurance, PMI, maintenance, and closing costs, approximately $177,000. Total equity built, $122,800. Net housing cost after subtracting accumulated wealth, approximately $54,200. 5 years of living in a 3-bedroom Austin home effectively cost around $54,200 after accounting for wealth creation. The renter. Rent has climbed to approximately $1,880 monthly. Total rent paid over 5 years, approximately $97,000. Investment portfolio value, approximately $121,400. Net worth position, $121,400. The result after 5 years. Buyer equity, $122,800. Renter investments, $121,400. The buyer now leads by roughly $1,400. Almost identical. And this is where renters usually argue the stress and responsibility of ownership is not worth it. But look carefully at the monthly payment trend. The buyer started at $2,236 monthly and still pays roughly the same amount. The renter started at $1,620 and is now paying around $1,880. The monthly gap narrowed from $600 to roughly $350. And that gap keeps shrinking every single year, because rent only moves in one direction. The rent problem. This is the part almost every rent versus buy conversation ignores. Everyone focuses on the monthly payment today. Nobody focuses on what the rent becomes over time. The renter started at $1,620 monthly, at only 4% annual increases. Year 1, $1,620. Year 3, $1,752. Year 5, $1,882. Year 7, $2,022. Year 10, $2,273. Year 12, $2,442. Year 15, $2,743. By year 15, rent reaches $2,743 monthly. Meanwhile, the buyer is still paying the same $1,706 principal and interest payment from month 1. Same number. 15 years later. Inflation slowly makes the mortgage cheaper in real terms every year while rent becomes heavier every year. In year 1, the mortgage feels painful. By year 8, it feels normal. By year 12, it actually feels cheap compared to comparable rentals nearby. A mortgage is not just a payment. It is a long-term price lock on housing costs in an inflationary world. That advantage does not fully appear in spreadsheets. But you absolutely feel it over time. The gap at year 10. Age 35. The buyer. Home value. Approximately $459,000. Mortgage balance. $223,400. Equity. $235,600. Average maintenance over the decade. Approximately $4,100 annually. Total maintenance over 10 years. Approximately $41,000. Monthly housing costs in year 10 including taxes and insurance. Roughly $2,280. Net wealth position. $235,600 in equity. The renter. Year 10 rent. Approximately $2,273 monthly. Total rent paid over 10 years. Approximately $233,000. Monthly investment contributions shrank as rent increased. By year 7, contributions dropped from $616 to around $460 monthly. By year 9, contributions dropped again to around $380. Total portfolio value at year 10, approximately $209,800. Net worth position, $209,800. The result after 10 years. Buyer equity, $235,600. Renter investments, $209,800. The buyer now leads by approximately $25,800. And the gap starts accelerating here, because leverage is still working. Every year the house appreciates, the buyer benefits from appreciation on the entire home value. Not the original $42,000, the full asset. Meanwhile, the renter only earns returns on the actual invested balance. The math has shifted, and it is no longer shifting back. Year 11. Something happens that completely changes the renter strategy. The landlord sells the building. New ownership. New management company. Then the lease renewal arrives. Rent increase, 14%. Monthly rent jumps from $2,340 to $2,668 in one letter. You search for alternatives nearby. Comparable rentals in the same neighborhood now range between $2,550 and $2,900. There is nowhere comparable to move cheaply anymore. So you accept the increase. And to survive the rent shock, monthly investments collapse from $380 to only $140 monthly. The original strategy was to invest the difference between renting and ownership. But the difference kept shrinking every single year. Then one aggressive rent increase nearly erased the investment strategy entirely. Meanwhile, the buyer experiences none of this. Month 132. Same mortgage payment as month 1. $1,706. For 11 straight years, inflation increased almost every cost in the economy except the mortgage payment. Raises at work slowly made the payment feel smaller over time. The pressure that felt overwhelming at age 25 slowly faded away. This is what monthly payment comparisons never show you. Mortgages become easier over time. Rent becomes harder over time. The final gap, year 15. Age 40, the buyer. Home value, approximately $563,000. Mortgage balance, $196,200. Equity, $366,800. Total interest paid over 15 years, approximately $190,000. Total maintenance, approximately $61,500. Total taxes and insurance, approximately $79,000. Total spent including down payment and closing costs, approximately $542,000. Total equity built, $366,800. Net 15-year housing cost after subtracting accumulated wealth, approximately $175,200. That is the true cost of owning and living in the house for 15 years after accounting for everything. Interest, maintenance, taxes, insurance, closing costs, everything. And after 15 years, the buyer still owns a home worth more than $500,000 with only 15 years left on the mortgage. The renter. Year 15 rent, $2,743 monthly. Total rent paid over 15 years, approximately $349,000. Investment portfolio value after 15 years of compounding and shrinking contributions, approximately $306,400. Net worth position, $306,400. The final result after 15 years. Buyer equity, $366,800. Renter investments, $306,400. The buyer leads by approximately $60,400. And the buyer still owns an appreciating asset with 15 years remaining on a fixed mortgage. The renter still sends a monthly payment with no finish line anywhere in sight. Why the buyer won? Not because buying is always correct. The buyer won for 3 specific reasons. Reason 1. Leverage. A $42,000 investment controlled a $295,000 appreciating asset for 15 straight years. Reason 2. Fixed housing costs in an inflationary world. The mortgage payment never changed while rent continuously increased. Reason 3. Forced savings. Every mortgage payment automatically built equity. There were no skipped contributions. No emotional investing decisions. No interruptions in the system. The mortgage forced wealth building automatically for 15 years. The renter strategy required perfect investing discipline while rent kept increasing every single year. And 15 years is a very long time. When renting actually wins? There are absolutely situations where renting is smarter. Situation 1. You are not staying at least 7 years. Closing costs, agent commissions, minimal early equity. Short-term ownership usually loses financially. Situation 2. You live in a market where home prices are disconnected from rent prices. Places like Manhattan, San Francisco, or coastal Los Angeles. In some markets, renting genuinely makes more mathematical sense. Situation 3. You truly invest every dollar consistently for 15 years without exception. If the renter perfectly invests the difference every month, the strategy absolutely works mathematically. But most people do not maintain that discipline for 15 straight years. The difference slowly disappears into lifestyle upgrades, better cars, more restaurants, trips, convenience spending. The spreadsheet assumes perfect behavior. Real life usually does not. The only thing that was ever true: you are 25 years old. You have $42,000 saved. And after this video ends, real life still continues. The lease renewal still arrives. The Zillow notifications still appear. The real decision is not simply buy versus rent. The real decision is whether you truly understand what each path costs over decades instead of only looking at what fits your budget this month. The buyer did not win because buying is automatically better. The buyer won because the 15-year question was asked at 25 instead of the monthly question. And the renter was never wrong for renting. The renter was wrong for treating the monthly payment as the end of the analysis when it was only the beginning. The home you buy or choose not to buy at 25 can still shape your financial life at 55. That was always the real story. Drop a comment below and tell me honestly. Are you currently renting or do you own your home? And if you rent, have you ever actually calculated the 15-year numbers? Not the monthly payment, the full 15-year numbers. Because your answer tells me exactly what to make for you next. If this video showed you something real, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Mr. Wealthy for weekly videos that break down the numbers everyone else skips. See you in the next one.